Mental health or mental illness? What's the difference? Let's talk about that. So I'll begin this video by defining mental health. And this is the definition from the WHO. Mental health is a state of well-being in which every individual realises his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work proactively and fruitfully, and can contribute to his or her community. Mental health, put simply, is a state of well-being. It's a positive outlook on a potential negative thing. But we often only refer to mental health in the negative. Mental health in itself is the ability to be socially and emotionally healthy, to be able to process difficult decisions, complex problems without fault, or without as little fault as any human is capable of providing. Mental illness, on the other hand, is detrimental. Mental illness is a cluster of different illnesses that affect the way we think, the way we feel, the way we interact with people. That being anxiety, depression, BPD, personality disorders, eating disorders, the list goes on. Things that are usually examined and diagnosed through standard medical procedures and criteria. And we know there are steps that we can take to live a healthier life. There are steps we can take to think positively. There are medications we can take to temporarily alleviate, and I say temporarily because I don't think it's permanent, to temporarily alleviate the issues. But the big question is, why do we refer to what is a mental illness as mental health? We don't even caveat mental health with poor mental health. We just refer to it as mental health. And why? It's potentially down, and this is my opinion, it is potentially down to stigma and the treatment of mental health or mental illnesses in society. Illness has connotations of something other, something we don't understand. Take the global situation we are in. Illness is an overt negative. When we say illness, we know what we mean. But illness in itself comes in many different forms. We just don't necessarily say it's an illness. We have colloquialisms to describe that, such as, I've got a cold, so I feel sick. I don't feel ill, it's not an illness, I just feel sick. We find ways around it, and it is our colloquialisms that do that, and it's a way that we can interact. It's another way that we can socialise and connect with other people, because it's our method of communication. But then we do start to risk masking the issue, and we start to stigmatise a relatively positive terminology. If we 360'd the terms mental health and mental illness, we could potentially switch attitudes. We could influence people's behaviours and the way that we interact. If you go to someone and you say, oh, I have a mental health issue, sometimes you can be treated as other. But if you go to someone and say, I've got really good mental health, then all that means to someone is that you're potentially not suffering with a bad mental health issue or a mental illness. You see where the confusion lies. There are lots of organisations, lots of charities, lots of TV companies, as it is with ITV, promoting talking. We're promoting talking about the issues, opening up, something I particularly struggle with. And I am up and down like a yo-yo on a bi-daily basis. I'll be happy 1 minute and then I'll be relatively sad. But again, that, without a diagnosis, would just appear normal. to some people because it's emotion. It's what we go through. It's the severity and the amount of times that I'm up and down like that stems the issue, that brings the issue to light. And as a sufferer of MS, yes, I can say that I do have poor mental health because I am wired in such a way that I just can't stop. I constantly have to be doing things. I can't sit down and relax. Right now, I could be sat down. It's a Sunday afternoon, early Sunday evening. I could be sat down just relaxing in the house. Instead, I'm doing this. I'm recording. I've been to the gym today. I've been into town. I've had a couple of cups of coffee. And I'm going to be shopping tonight because Christmas. I don't sleep very well. 4 hours if I'm lucky on some occasions. I'm doing things to help. I'm taking medications. I am trying to, in a way, burn myself out on a daily basis to the point where I do fall asleep at a relatively normal time, and it suddenly isn't the next day when I'm falling asleep at early hours of the morning and having to be up early hours of the morning. And that, I know, is a problem. That, I know, is something that I have to overcome. That is a mental illness, not mental health. That is my anxiety and my depression creeping in to the everyday and having the impact on my mental health. So the long story short of this video, where we talk about mental health, we are effectively talking about mental illness and its impact on our mental health. So how do we change things? We stop referring to mental health as the problem and start referring to mental illness as the problem and how that is impacting our mental health. We can't continue to hide behind a fluffy term of mental health being the overarching qualifying status or statement, because it isn't. Mental health has its up and downs. Mental illness is definitive. We treat mental illness, we don't treat mental health. We should be working towards positive mental health by combating negative mental illness. We should be referring to mental illness and not mental health. Or if we are referring to mental health, we should be referring it into the way that, hey, how to get a positive mental health outlook. How to live healthy, and not just in regards to physical health. Not just in regards to, I need to lose a few pounds. Especially now that it's coming up to Christmas, where a lot of people are going to be thinking, I need to lose a few pounds so that I can offset the fact that I might gain a few pounds over the Christmas holiday. There are attitudes that need to change, and it's not any individual's responsibility to change things. Just as mental illness is not an individual's responsibility, it is not brought on by our actions. It's something that creeps in like a shadow on your shoulder. It creeps in and starts to eat away at things. It makes things worse, and it makes our mental health dip. And we can steadily try to climb out of the abyss that it puts us in, but it will drag us back. And one of the reasons that we don't talk is because there's no clarity. No one has a full understanding of mental illness and why it is, why it exists. That's trying to put logic to it, and there isn't necessarily logic to mental illness. Everyone's experience of mental illness is different, and some people won't have experienced it, or at least they won't feel like they've experienced mental illness, because it might be something that for them was temporary. A moment of sadness that lasted for a while, where they didn't feel motivated or anything, but then they came out on the other side of it without having to seek treatment or anything like that. They might feel happy that with their life, that they're living the life that they want to, they're pretty much in a position that they want to be in, and they can crack on. And that might make people hesitant to talk as well, because someone looks to be having such a perfect life over here, and then there's you that potentially isn't, and he's struggling. And when we see someone living that good life, we don't want to interrupt that by burdening with our issues, shall we say. So there is a need to talk. There's a need to overcome that stigma, where from a person with mental illness looking at someone without mental illness and going, well, I can't talk to them because one, they won't understand, and two, I don't want to be a burden. And there's also the other side of it, where people with positive mental health and not suffering with mental illness, see the clear difference there, imparting sort of care to the people that are struggling. And we're not asking for you to mollycoddle. We're not asking for people to understand. We're just asking, in a lot of cases, for an ear, someone to listen. I sure know that if I do speak to people, and one of the reasons that I talk to a camera is because I'm not comfortable speaking to people. If I do speak to people on the off chance, I'm not doing it with the expectation that they're going to give me some God level wisdom. I'm doing it because that's how I start to achieve positive mental health, and I start to draw back the shadow on the shoulder, and I make it that little bit smaller by changing my actions. But I also have to change talking mental health to mental illness, because mental health just rolls off the tongue now, because that's what we've been raised to do. Whereas it's this dark patch, the illness, that's what we need to start talking about and fighting it.